Hello to everyone, my name is Dem'yan. I represent Воркшоп Academy from Ukraine and also Warsaw University, East European Studies Department. You have my theme in your program, this long, complicated thing, but when I started working on it, I understood that it is a very broad topic. So I changed the theme of my presentation to definition and periodization of Russian-Ukrainian hybrid war. But still, I think that this presentation will help us to understand the form and nature of this events of this war between Russia and Ukraine. My presentation will be about two things. So actually definition, what is hybrid war, and periodization, so phases of, not causes, phases of Russian war. And main sources, there are many articles on this theme in Ukraine and in English and in Ukrainian, in Russian, but main source was the analytical paper of Ukrainian Center of Global Studies. It's like an analytical center newly created, and so putting hybridation, like hybrid aggression. And also Frank Hoffman, his book from 2007, that is already became a classical book for hybrid conflicts. New age war, postmodern war, unconventional war, non-linear war, diffuse war, creeping war, proxy war, network-centric war, rebellion war, hybrid war. Many terms are used to describe this phenomena, but the most appropriate probably is only to be determined in future by experts. But all of them reflect the different features of a phenomenon that Ukraine faced in 2014, actually, and world also faced. But regardless used definitions, the main feature was the dominance of non-military components in the solution of military tasks. Whatever term you use, the essence remains the same. It is actually a war, and to my mind, the hybrid war is the best definition to describe this new concept of war of new generation. So let's go further. It's for many scientists, for many politicians, journalists, all these events in 2014 came as a surprise, and it's commonly there is a thought very widespread that it was like a Russian invention, but of course it was not. In modern times, the term hybrid warfare appeared at least as early as 2005, and subsequently it was used to describe the Lebanon war, the actions of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Since then, this term was spread among the scientists. Then, as you can see, so of course you know the treatise of Sun Tzu, the Art of War, his famous treatise that was written more than 2,000 years ago, and so one of the strategies of this book is supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. So it is the one of the most prominent features of current hybrid wars. Then we can also Clausewitz wrote in his book, the backbone of surprise is fuzzing, connecting speed is secrecy. So the success of war depends on secrecy and speed. Despite it, we can, of course, there are, for example, Lenin at early Soviet times used the hybrid elements to seize Estonia, to seize Ukraine, all these young countries. International, it was also like a type of hybrid war. And so on and so on. KGB during 60s, 70s, United States, so it is not new. Talking about Russia, there is a very important year. So in February 2013, the current chief of General Staff of the Armed Forces of Russian Federation, General Valery Gerasimov, wrote an article in some military Russian newspaper, where in this article he announced presented a new approach of Russia to modern conflicts, and it was he stated, he used this term hybrid wars and non-linear wars. So we can Russia just accepted it like a new strategy. On this slide, let's talk about some features. Each hybrid conflict, each hybrid war has its features. It has very prominent features. So use of irregular forces, special forces, economic warfare, cyber attacks, diplomacy, support of local unrest. But another, so we can say for sure that very important thing is uncertainty at first stage of war plays actually key role. What does it mean? So it is difficult to define and classify what is happening for the victim of aggression and for third party, because as an example, at the beginning of occupation of Crimea, Russian television, Russian media used such terms as green man, polite people, вежливые люди, to identify Russian forces, and it was very unusual. It was very strange for both for Ukrainian politicians and for Western leaders. Then the next very important feature is use of internal conflict potential of victim countries. So each country, there is assumption that each country has its own internal conflict potential. And unfortunately, Ukraine had and has, I think, this potential of big internal potential, and obviously it was used during this invasion. Another feature that military success and actually victory is ensured with minimum use of armed forces. So just minimal use of military. The fourth feature is that the attacker tries to use resources of the victim against the victim itself. The vivid example is that Russia's attempt to force Ukraine to fund occupied territories, and actually Russia continues to do it. And yesterday we had, when we talked about Transnistria, so it is very good example when Moldova accepts the debt of these uncontrolled territories, and so it is like a very big problem for country. The next feature is creating the illusion of non-involvement of the aggressor to this conflict, and initiating, moreover, initiating peacekeeping initiatives. So it is all these things are stages of a big plan. And so also another thing that aggressor tries to induce third parties not to intervene in this conflict. For example, Russia had succeed in not allowing defensive weapons to Ukraine. So it was like it is a good example of such a strategy. And of course, informational ideological support. So very briefly, the basis of this of Russian aggression against Ukraine must under the protection against imaginary attack from the West. So it is from the point of view of Russian ideologists. It is not aggression. It is like a defensive war against someone else. So to summarize, we can say that there are many definitions in literature on Wikipedia, but it's a kind of a mix. I think this is one of the easiest one. Hybrid warfare is a military strategy that exploits domestic weaknesses with the help of non-military means. Political, informational, economic, cultural, but it is always backed by the threat of conventional military means. It is very important, last part of the sentence, that any hybrid aggression, there is always threat of direct conventional war from the aggressor. Okay, to summarize this part was part of my presentation, so we can say that, let me use this comparison, that the victim country turns out in the role of a mouse being chased by a cat, and you can guess who is who in this picture, who is Ukraine, who is Russia. Okay. The second, this is very complicated table, but yeah, I see very briefly. Complicated table, but it is very important table. So let's have a brief look on this periodization. So this table helps us to understand the logic of this war, and actually, of course, I think I will need more time, but the crypto first phase. So first phase it was started in 2003 till 2013. Maybe it could be like a surprise, but this is completely true. And it calls a crypto war. It is a separate stage of aggressive actions in hidden form, but it is not actually a war itself. But it is very important and mandatory step, but it is not a hybrid itself, a hybrid phase of war. It is a gradual, systematic and long-term damage to the enemy in order to cause maximum damage till the moment of decision of actual aggression. Then, the proxy phase is a part of hybrid war. It is a sort of culmination of the efforts of the non-military phase of hybrid aggression. This phase is usually very short, up to several months, and if the proxy phase, second one, is successful, it is followed by a diffuse invasion. Aggression from inside, supported by external aggression state. This one and next one, military phase, are the main stages of hybrid war. If the internal conflict potential is switched on properly, and if proxy phase and victim has been escalated enough in crypto war, these two phases should pass very quickly, like a blitzkrieg. Examples: Crimea campaign will be and is a textbook example of success of such hybrid war, and another one in Novorossiya is a good example of collapse of this strategy because they just automatically imposed the same strategy to the region that was different. Then very quickly intraphase. So the main idea of this of all these phases is that hybrid war is not, it is an unusual one. So whether you fail with one stage, you can switch to another one. So you always have something new. And for example, now we have in Ukraine we have controlled de-escalation and intraphase till now. And for example, if Russia, I can assume that if Russia will fail with Minsk 2, so maybe next stage will be peacekeeping operation and the final stage is controlled transformation of occupied territory. This stage is actually working when all objectives of invasion are achieved, and the main problem is defined to stabilize the occupied territory, like Transnistria and Moldova. Okay, hybrid war. My very last conclusion is that that events that are taking place between Russia and Ukraine is actually a war, and it should be researched as a war. It should be treated as a war, and it should be discussed as a war, because all these events are suits to the definition, and they have all features of hybrid war. Thank you for attention, and remember that even a small mouse sometimes can effectively resist a big cat.
Thank you, Dem'yan, for this very nice overview and very nice definition and the phases, the overview of the phases. Any direct questions that immediately need to be asked? That's quite many already. So anything which can wait until the end, or do you need to ask right now?
Mine is short. I just want to have an example.
Okay, on what?
On the crypto war, the very first stage.
Mm-hmm.
Just one simple
Example, yeah, Tuzla, Maitan, gas wars, economic invasion, cultural invasion. We had the last maybe five years, we had enormous amount of secret service agents in all armed forces in Ukraine and SBU. So it has many aspects.
question of independence for Russia.
Yes.
Since we have already several hands here, I suggest we note down the questions and wait until the next presentation is done.
I need to look at the scheme of this timeline.
Dem'yan, can you just save the presentation? We'll leave the presentation over there, because I think Tatiana doesn't have a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
So we can come back to your slides later on, because I'm sure many questions would concern actually your slides. Yeah. Thank you. All right, and now we have Tatiana talking about information war in Donbass. So we are back to discussing information.